Nikolas Witsen on fossils, author Imara on Tartaria info. Let's decipher the name Nicolaas. Is it Nikolai or Nikolai A.S.? Whitson's son means son, so it turns out son of Victor. So it was just a Russian man named A.S. Nikolai Victor's son A. And to put it even more simply, Nikolai Viktorovich Asov, nice to meet you. But that's just to warm up the brain, why be sad about it? First I'll read the article, and at the end I'll draw some conclusions so that it's clear what this is all about. A brief biographical note. Nikolai Witsen was born in the mid-17th century into a merchant family in Amsterdam. He received a diverse education, studied mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, shipbuilding, engaged in poetry, and became a skilled draftsman and engraver. He held a doctorate in law, occupied a prominent position in the state system, was elected mayor of Amsterdam 13 times in his life, served as a member of the Dutch parliament, and went on diplomatic missions to England and Russia. All this time he systematically kept a diary, which today serves as a valuable and reliable historical source of information about the life and customs of Russia at that time. The diary Northern and Eastern Tartary is part of Witsen's main work. At that time Europeans called Siberia Tartary, although as we now know our ancestors never called the Russes by that name. In addition to mentioning the flood in his diary, Northern and Eastern Tartary, there are references to fossils that testify to some natural or man-made catastrophe that occurred in the distant or not so distant past. Quote, in Siberia there are rivers that turn wood that falls into them into stone. I have a similar petrified piece of wood that was sent to me from there. It is brownish black in color, somewhat similar in color to agate or black marble, but you can still see the veins and fibers of the wood and a few gray streaks. It is lighter than ordinary stone but heavier than wood. The Muscovites call this petrified wood Adam's tree, believing that it is very ancient. All the more so because it is found not only in riverbeds but mainly in the middle of mountains deep beneath the surface. Judging by its fibers, weight and appearance, it resembles linden wood. Interestingly, trustworthy witnesses who lived for several years in Siberia and near Astrakhan say, although I wouldn't dare to confirm this under oath since I haven't seen it myself, that behind the city of Azov or a bit further inland. In Tartary there is an area where petrified people can be seen in the steppe in various poses, as if they were alive. One eyewitness counted 18 of them and with his own hands gathered a pile of stones and seated one of the petrified men on them like a rider on a horse. I will also mention here that on the map of Tartary published by Ortelius in 1562 you can read about these petrified people. In addition, one Persian writer clearly indicates where these petrified bodies were seen. At the place where he marked a lake, which he called China, at the source of the Ob River. Here, he says, there are stones in the shape of people, camels, cattle, and other objects. As if a whole grazing horde with their cattle turned to stone, amazingly and inexplicably, changed quickly and instantly, without changing their posture. These wonders, he reports, happened 300 years before him, that is, around the year 1200. Here we see Jenkinson's map of Tartary from the year 1562. The Consul General in Tripoli in Barbary informed me in his letters that an entire region called Agela, which lies 7 days' journey from Derna, about halfway between Tripoli and Alexandria, has completely turned to stone. So people, animals, trees and grass, all of this can still be seen in petrified form. Other people who lived in Algiers for a long time have told me the same thing. When camels have to walk with their soft feet on such stony ground, they are fitted with leather shoes with nails so they don't hurt their feet on the stone grass. A petrified person like that was brought from there to Venice, and you can see him there in person. 2 other letters from Tripoli in Barbary, which follow below from the consul of that state and another person, confirm that this is true. Text of the letter: Gracious and highly respected sir. Monsieur the French consul, while leaving here for Benghazi to purchase horses, meanwhile sent his vice-consul to the region of Ogala, which has been turned to stone, which seemed unbelievable to us. But now there is no longer any doubt, since he brought back from there large pieces of date palm and olive tree weighing more than 200 pounds, which looked as if they had been cut down less than a year ago. Among these rarities is a piece of fig tree, in which the milk or lagabe can still be clearly seen. All around this place there are trees lying everywhere along the road, all made of stone. The pieces had to be broken off with hammers. The houses and people are heavily covered with sand. It was only with great effort and difficulty that one could reach them. I have several pieces from them that I would like to send to you. With this, I remain your humble servant, N. Tripoli, June 20th, 1691. The text of another letter. The French consul, who traveled to Benghazi to buy horses for his king, sent his vice-consul to Agela, 7 days' journey to the east, deep into the country. This area has turned to stone, which seemed unbelievable to us. He brought back from there large pieces of date and olive trees weighing up to 2 quintals. They look so natural that you can easily see the veins and color as if it's a living tree. Now there is no more doubt. He gave me a large piece of fig tree and 2 pieces of olive tree. I will keep them for you, to whom I respectfully kiss the hand. Tripoli, Barbaria, June 16th, 1691. One more letter. The region of New Agela, which borders Old Agela, is obliged to pay tribute to the administration of Tripoli. It is fertile and populated, stretching several days' journey in size. The petrified trees in abandoned Agela lie in whole rows, all in one direction, as if knocked down by a strong wind rather than buried under a layer of sand. Sometimes they are revealed when the wind blows the sand away. The place has no animals, only some nasty snakes. There are petrified fig trees on which the fruits and sap are still visible as if they were alive. The wood, fruits and trees have completely preserved their natural color. The area of the old petrified and new Agela is flat, located about 7 days' journey from the sea. The aforementioned former state consul in Tripoli told me more about this when he arrived at the court. After clarifying with eyewitnesses, he told me that in the desert inland behind Tripoli, fossilized objects are often found, such as various fruits. He saw fossilized bread still very similar to real bread, on which you could still see the blackened bottom from the oven. I can't explain the reason for the appearance of these fossils. But just as wood placed in water becomes petrified because stony particles floating in the water penetrate the wood, remain there, and surround the wooden parts. Similarly, a rain or whirlwind of stony water rising from the ground may have covered these people and objects, suffocating, stunning, and petrifying them. Similarly, with the rain, millions of locusts in Africa swarm onto the fields and devour everything. Entire fields and regions in Suriname are covered with caterpillars. In Norway, it has been observed that during rain or dew some mice would fall, which would damage the fields. As written by Wormius and Bartholinus, it is also possible that this happened during a hurricane or a storm. Just like around Amsterdam, many trees are found underground, all knocked down in one direction by the wind and later covered with sand and soil. Maybe this land contained a substance that causes petrification, just as petrification sometimes occurs in the surrounding areas, which then turned all these trees, as well as the cattle and people who were on this land, into stone. For I was told that petrified people were found on their knees, in a posture as if they were praying. But since not so many petrified people are found, probably most of the people, when the wind knocked down the trees and the fertile land was covered with sand and rocky soil, they fled to fertile New Agela. They sent me several fairly large pieces of wood from there, branches and roots, which in this petrified land in ancient Agela turned into stone. A petrified human bone was also found there. It is as hard as stone while retaining the color and appearance of a bone. The Moors do not want Christians to talk about this area or learn about it, because they believe that God punished this area by turning it to stone for the sins of the ancient inhabitants. They try to hide this phenomenon and do not want to give Christians the opportunity to claim that the sins of the people who lived there before, who were supposedly Mohammedans, were greater than the sins of Christians. The fact that the petrification of this area of Agela is real was also confirmed to me by a young man named Robert Tunis, who was taken into slavery in Tunis and served as a valet to Ali Bey, the exiled king. deep in the country, very far to the south of the mentioned area. He studied the region more closely than any European. He wandered around this petrified land. He also saw pieces of petrified wood brought from this area and kept by me. And he told me how one of his companions named Cornelius, originally from Vlieland, also a slave, once traveled with his master to Mecca and passed through this petrified land. And he told him how he saw that the trees, the fruits, and everything there had turned to stone. The reason they traveled through wild Africa was that Ali Bey, or the Prince of Tunis, whose slave he was, lost a battle to his brother Mahomet. Many hundreds of people were killed in the process. He had to flee to save his life, and with 300 men he reached the borders of the pagan kingdom of Borna, where the people are black and go naked. This escape lasted for 6 months, during which he rarely rested for more than 4 days at a time. At first, after the battle, he still had several thousand men, but they deserted him and died along the way from hardship. His army dwindled to 300 men. He encountered many strange things there. At first, heading south, he saw a very fertile land, where there were many lions, tigers, and other predatory animals. The land is quite densely populated by people of the Mohammedan faith, dressed in a piece of cloth or a blanket thrown over them. The farther south he went, the darker the people were. Then he reached a desert without people or animals, where there is not enough water and nothing grows. There he saw a lake covered with layers of salt several feet thick. They crossed this lake heading south for a whole day. The lake stretches far to the east and west. The Moors call it the frozen or closed salt lake, the Sea of Pharaoh. The water beneath this hardened or thickened salt was very salty and green. Using a stick as long as 2 spears, they couldn't reach the bottom. In the middle of the lake, on an island, there were date palm trees that they couldn't reach because the thickened salt around the island was fragile. The Mauritanian princes and lords follow the Mohammedan faith, but they are very ignorant of its teachings. Those he met here and there welcomed the exiled prince, kindly offering him food made of mutton and grains unknown here, which resembled barley. The people there live almost entirely in tents. There you can find ancient local Moorish and Arab clans who lead a nomadic lifestyle. To the south lies an uninhabited desert, and then you encounter naked black people. They say there are elephants and gold there. The people of Borno fight with these black people and sell the captives into slavery to Tripolitan merchants. That is, sometimes they come to Borno to trade gold, ivory and slaves. Then apparently come those black people who live near Guinea. Bartholinus tells how, in the vicinity of Tripoli, a city turned to stone in a short time. From there, a petrified child was brought to France, and where he said he saw a petrified tree. The gentleman mentioned undoubtedly meant this area by the name Petrified City. Aguela in 1691 they wrote from Paris. Regarding petrification in the New Lakes, the following. They say that in Africa a city was found completely turned to stone. That men and women were brought from there to the king, and that they intend to bring some more of them from there to decorate the gardens in Versailles. The late, very learned Hendrik Franken, who served for many years in Smyrna as pastor of the Reformed Church, told me that the petrified region of Aguila is very well known there, and that he saw a great many bones of trees, dates, melons, lemons, and other fruits, and petrified objects brought from there through Tunis. From the island of Sumatra, where the Dutch East India Company has possessions, I was brought a heavy piece of wood that, after lying for a long time in marshy soil, turned into stone. It weighs about 100 pounds and looks like ordinary wood. You can clearly see that the bottom appears to have been chopped with an axe. The remains of branches are also visible. In color, it resembles oak. The outer bark is grayer than the inner trunk. The grain lines of the wood are clearly visible. It is as hard as marble, and you can strike sparks from it. The rings, the grain, and the twists of the wood are visible, and even a few cracks. When I had this petrified wood split open, inside there were pieces and fragments that were even darker than the outer bark and very much resembled old wood, but in hardness they were like stone. In 1702 I was sent another piece of wood from the East Indies that had turned into stone, just like those found in the rivers of Upper Palembang. The height of this piece is over 6 feet, and at the base its thickness is about 5 spans in circumference. It has visible cracks and broken splinters, most of which have turned to stone, although inside they look like wood and are still partly wood. Yes, among the stone fragments there is decayed or rather rotten wood, which obviously could not undergo any changes. You can split it in different places, just like you can with regular wood. The color of the wood is still clearly visible. In some places, the stone is as hard as a cobblestone, so you can strike fire from it, while in other places the petrified wood is softer and differs in color. In some places it is snow white and shiny, while in others it is brownish yellow, and in the middle, close to black, even completely black, which is obviously the natural color of the wood. It weighs a little less than 800 pounds. From this large piece you can see that on the outside there is a layer of very hard stone, white like marble, which, in addition to the petrification, has settled on the old wood and become attached to it. You can still see the bark on it, although the color has changed, and this piece, because of its uniqueness, deserves special attention. In the mountains of Italy called Marusidi, in the lands of Tuscany, there is a stone that can be cut like wood and which resembles it, as can be seen from several pieces of it that I have. But maybe it just seems to me, or perhaps it really is the case, that this underground wood, hardened like stone, is very similar in color, weight and appearance to the wood found in Holland, in the low swampy or peat fields underground, which the peasants dig up and use as planks to cover their houses. I also have a piece of charcoal that was dug up in Etruria very deep underground, and I also have fish that were found between slate stones deep in the Tuscan mountains. I also have a very large fossilized lemon of a special kind. You can clearly distinguish the outer and inner skin, as well as the pulp of the fruit, the inner membranes, fibers, and the juice inside. All of this can be seen very clearly because it is split open, and even the protrusion or the spot where it was attached to the tree is visible. I also have a large collection of fossilized olives, pistachios, fossilized oysters, both open and closed, hard as stones, and so similar to fresh, living oyster shells that you can't tell them apart by appearance. There are white, brown and black fossilized mushrooms that have preserved their color and appearance so naturally that you can't see any difference from those that grow in the fields, but to the touch they are hard and heavy. It's worth examining several pieces of stone, slate and other types sent to me from the region of Tuscany. It's clear that fish are hidden or embedded in them, and that they too have become fossilized. You can distinguish the scales, fins, heads and tails. They were dug out from the depths of the mountains. 2 of them are shown here, and their size is greater than a span. On the island of Cyprus, not far from Famagusta, there is an area where, near a certain rock, many bones of people and animals are found fused together and turned into stone. As eyewitnesses inform me, among these bones they even found a petrified brain. On the same island, in a place called Nicosia, there is a small hill entirely made up of petrified oysters. In their shells also turned to stone, and preserving to this day all the external features of oysters and shells. I am reliably informed that in Chile, on a high mountain or between mountains, 3 Spanish soldiers were found lying on their sides, who had been there for a long time, that is, externally petrified. But when the stone layer was removed from them, meat and blood were still found inside. Who knows, maybe this happened because of a passing cloud carrying stone dust, or perhaps from the bodies lying in such close contact for a long time that they became petrified. Maybe the soft parts decayed, and the largest, roughest parts hardened into a single mass from long contact and turned into stone, while still keeping their original appearance. In the books of Mr. Tevenot we read that similar fossils were found in Mongolia. In the vicinity of the aforementioned Ageli toward the sea, there are remains of an almost completely buried ancient city, which apparently was adorned with marble houses and buildings. Since there are many heavy worked pieces of white marble at a depth of 1 or 1.5 feet covered with earth, and many large columns and various stones, it is believed that this was the city of Leptis. So the article is finished. Summary from the channel Valerie. What conclusions can be drawn from this information? Petrified trees, animals and fish are found both in riverbeds and in the mountains, on the surface and deep beneath the surface. It's clear that the witnesses don't understand the nature of the fossilization process of living organisms, so frankly speaking, they're talking nonsense. The idea that some wind-carrying stone dust comes and instantly petrifies people's bodies is just nonsense from a layperson. It's absolutely obvious that the city was subjected to some kind of directed radiation, after which all living things turned to stone. Such a weapon is mentioned in the Mahabharata, which was most likely fought at the beginning of the Middle Ages and was later mystified and pushed back into ancient times. That is most likely the witnesses of these petrifications saw the consequences of a recent war that was fought on the territory of all Rus. These witnesses also confirm large-scale directed explosions. The process of complete petrification or just the surface layer suggests that the intensity of the radiation may decrease with distance. This is indicated by the external petrification of soldiers who still had fresh blood and flesh inside. Most likely in this case they were struck by a portable weapon during a combat encounter. What kind of aliens fight with such weapons? No need to guess, it's the blue ones of course. And I'm not joking at all. The fact that the tree can take on different structures and the color of stone, or on the contrary, not change its natural color, suggests that the radiation can have different phase settings, power, frequencies, or some other settings of the emitting equipment. Most likely the radiation changes the structure of matter, but it cannot change the weight of the object. It is possible that petrified organisms that exceed their original weight most likely have naturally petrified rocks. When, deep within the rock, the molecules of an organism are gradually replaced by minerals over a long period of time, and something that was once alive takes on the appearance of stone. I believe that the human brain could not possibly become petrified under any circumstances, which also supports the theory of radiation exposure. In addition, based on Nikolai Viktorovich's observations, we can create a sort of map showing exactly where the military actions of the recent war took place. If the dates are correct, then the 17th century was a kind of respite between the previous war and the flood, and the subsequent war and the next flood. Although I admit that Nikolai Viktorovich may have lived in a different century, which was determined by 19th century historians. This is the kind of interesting information we were able to gather from the records of our distant ancestor, or perhaps not so distant in terms of time, but very active and intelligent. Subtitles created by